unthinkable to me that you have an opportunity in your lifetime to be a professional, that you think about quitting. See, you don't quit it, and you don't quit in sports. You retire. You don't get to quit. It's not an option. See, someone told me that a long time ago. That ain't even an option. The person told me that, he ain't here anymore. He died. This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire.
This first episode is going to be a deep dive into both the NFC and the AFC West divisions and a preview at the upcoming schedules. So let's actually jump into it. The first one I'd like to talk about is the 49ers. San Francisco 49ers are coming off of a terrific year last year in which they won their division. Not only did they win their division, but they also reached the Super Bowl and lost to the eventual champion Kansas City Chiefs. Some of the key subtractions the 49ers had over this past offseason was the retirement of their stalwart offensive tackle, Joe Staley, as well as they traded away two of their stud players, two key parts of their team last season and their success. Number one, running back Matt Breida, who didn't play so much in the playoffs, but was a huge factor in the beginning of their season, as well as their all-pro defensive tackle, DeForest Buckner, which they eventually did trade away to the Indianapolis Colts for a first-round pick. Now, this move was highly questioned at the time. However, in hindsight, it makes sense as they had to pay both DeForest Buckner and they were going to have to pay Eric Armstead. And so they chose to pay the latter one, Armstead, and to let DeForest Buckner go, and where he eventually signed with the Indianapolis Colts for $21 million per year. And so if you're a team like the 49ers, you just can't pay that kind of money to two defensive linemen and your quarterback making about $35 million per year. So it was a move they had to make. However, they were able to fill that void with DeForest Buckner being traded with their first pick in the NFL draft. They did select Javon Kinlaw, a defensive tackle out of South Carolina. He should fit in very nicely into what the 49ers are trying to do up front. He'll probably play right next to Nick Bosa, and ultimately they should form a pretty terrifying tandem. In addition, in the first round, they were able to pick up wide receiver Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State. He's a terrific route runner. He should be able to make people miss in open space, and I think he's going to be a great fit with what the 49ers do, what Kyle Shanahan does with his creative play calling. It should be a pretty nice, pretty seamless fit for him. Now, the other key thing that the 49ers did after they officially got notice of the retirement of Joe Staley, they did trade a third-round pick for all-pro offensive tackle Trent Williams. Now, Trent Williams hasn't played football in almost 2 years. Last year, at the beginning of the season, he had an injury. And after he did recover from his injury, he had the opportunity to come back to play, but decided to hold out until he got either traded to a new team or he got a contract offered to him that he was willing to take. So none of those things happened. So he actually held out all of last season, as well as the season before that where he had his injury, missed about half the season. So it's been almost 2 years since Trent Williams has seen the field, but we are all excited to see him play. Okay. Now, as far as the 49ers' schedule goes, they do have one of the toughest schedules ahead of them. In fact, all of the NFC West does have some of the toughest schedules that they'll be facing. However, I do think that this is going to be one of the toughest divisions. I think all of these teams are at least about 500 teams. So there's going to be a lot of competition. There's going to be a lot of good football to watch coming from the NFC West. So starting with the 49ers, in week 1, they host the Arizona Cardinals. I see them coming away with a win. In both weeks 2 and week 3, they will be playing in New York. Week 2, they play at the New York Jets. In week 3, they play at the New York Giants. They've already said that they will most likely just stay over there on the East Coast all week long and not have to travel back and forth. So when they do make that East Coast trip, they will be staying there for over a week. And with this being said, I do see them pulling away with two W's in New York as well. So they'll start out their season 3-0, come home in week 4 to play the Eagles, where they will ultimately lose to the Philadelphia Eagles. The next 2 weeks, again, they host the Dolphins and the Rams. Playing home against the Dolphins, I think that will be an intriguing game. They do have rookie quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, as well as veteran quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, which it remains to be seen who will actually be their starting quarterback at the beginning of the season and when that time comes. However, that will be an intriguing game that I'll be watching, keeping an eye on. However, I do still see the 49ers coming away with a win against both the Dolphins and the Rams in those last 2 weeks. In the second game there, when they host the Rams, that is a Sunday night game. Okay, so it'll be on primetime TV for the whole entire nation being able to watch. Should be exciting, but I do see the 49ers coming away with the win there. The following week, again, they do travel out east to play the Patriots. And I do see them coming away with the win in Foxborough. Of course, no more Tom Brady, so that kind of changes the dynamic of what the Patriots have. And the following week, they travel up to the Pacific Northwest to play the Seattle Seahawks, where I see the 49ers coming away with a loss. Okay, so 8 games into the schedule, I see the 49ers having a record of 6-2. Okay, so 8 games into the schedule, they're 6-2. And with the start of that Seahawks game, the Seattle Seahawks game, they do face a really tough 3-game stretch right before they hit their bye week. So starting with the Seahawks going to Seattle to play the Seahawks, the following week they play host to the Green Bay Packers, which is going to be on a Thursday night game. And last season, when the 49ers played the Packers twice, both games they put up over 30 points, and in both games they held the Packers to under 10 points. Okay, so that's a huge margin of victory, and I don't see it being any different this year. So I see the 49ers beating the Packers on that Thursday night game. And the following week, even though they'll have an extended break, they'll have a 10-day resting period until they have to travel to New Orleans to play the Saints. Even with this little rest, I see them coming away with a loss in New Orleans, and that takes them into their bye week, okay? So if you're a 49ers fan, you're feeling pretty good. You're at 7-3 heading into the bye week. Coming out of the bye week, they travel to Los Angeles to play the Rams. Well, they'll come away with a win. The following week, they host the Bills on Monday Night Football. I have this game earmarked as a really interesting game. Now, the Bills last season made the playoffs. That made it the second time they made the playoffs in the last 3 seasons. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to have a really tremendous season this year. So that is a game to really look out for. With that being said, on Monday night, hosting the Bills, I see the 49ers coming away with a win there. And the following week, hosting the Washington Redskins, and again, winning there as well. Okay, so the 3 games after the bye week brings their record to 10-3. And these last 3 games is where I see it going a little bit south for the 49ers. The following week after the Washington Redskins, they travel to Dallas to play the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, where they will ultimately get a loss. The following week, they travel to Arizona to face the Cardinals, where again, they will lose as well. And to wrap up their season in week 17, they host the Seattle Seahawks, where they will avenge their previous loss in Seattle, and they'll come away with a win that week in Week 17 against the Seahawks and ultimately wrap up the division. Okay. So 49ers, I have a record. I have them going 11-5 this season. Okay. Next up is the Seattle Seahawks. So the Seahawks again had a good season last season. They were vying for the division crown up until the very last week where they played the 49ers in Week 17 last season. Ultimately, the 49ers came away with a win and they won the division, and they had the number 1 seed in the NFC. So I think, like I said before, I think this is going to be a great division. I see a lot of good competition coming here. And ultimately, I think the Seahawks will be fighting for a playoff spot again. So 2 key losses that the Seahawks had this past offseason, and one of them actually is still a pending free agent that really at this point doesn't even have a team right now, and that's their all-pro, Pro Bowl linebacker / defensive end, Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney had a low season, had a down season in terms of production last season. However, we all know, and everybody knows that he is still a game wrecker. Okay. And so he's still a very valuable piece, and to lose him is going to be a lot for that Seahawks defense. Not only did they lose Clowney, but they also lost their interior defensive lineman, Quentin Jefferson. Those 2 combined could really make things a lot more difficult for the Seahawks. Okay. They still do have their 2 terrific linebackers in KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner. So it's going to be incumbent on them to really try to carry this team. Okay. So with that being said, some of the additions that the Seahawks made this past offseason was signing the former Pro Bowl tight end from the Carolina Panthers, Greg Olsen. I think that's a terrific signing. I know Russell Wilson likes to throw to his tight ends quite a bit. So I think so long as he can stay healthy, it'll be a tremendous pickup for the Seahawks. In the first round of the NFL draft, the Seahawks selected linebacker Jordan Brooks. Now, as I stated earlier, they still do have 2 terrific linebackers in KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner. I do not see them cutting KJ Wright, but I do see him losing some of those snaps to their new rookie linebacker, Jordan Brooks. He'll start out the season being a weak side linebacker and will probably take on more of a learning role at the beginning of the season, but come by the end of the season, I see him playing a lot of snaps right next to Bobby Wagner. They also got cornerback Quinton Dunbar, who unfortunately, if you've paid attention to the media, you'll know that he was just arrested on burglary charges. So I don't know how that's exactly going to play out at this point. I don't know if he's going to even be eligible to play. But if he is, that makes a terrific pickup on the opposite side from their other terrific cornerback in Shaquille Griffin. I think Shaquille Griffin's a terrific cornerback. And so having another stout player like Dunbar on the opposite side will really help out that Seahawks defense. But like I said, we don't know if he's going to actually be able to play. If he is charged with the crimes of burglary and battery and robbery, it's pretty nasty over there. Okay, but they did just get him from the Washington Redskins. And in addition, they picked up a nice reserve running back, a nice little second fiddle to their starting running back, Chris Carson, while Rashad Penny recovers from injury. And that's former 49ers running back, Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde last year spent the season with the Houston Texans, and I think had a great season with the Texans. However, he was a free agent, and he has just signed with the Seahawks. Now, as far as the schedule goes, like I said, every team in the NFC West has a tough schedule. And so with the Seahawks, it's no different. They start out the season by traveling to Atlanta to play the Falcons, where I see them losing to the Falcons. The following week, they host the New England Patriots in Seattle. And as we all know, the Seahawks hardly ever lose at home. So I see the Seahawks beating the Patriots on Sunday Night Football in week 2. And the following week, they host the Dallas Cowboys, where again they'll come away with a win. The following week, they travel to the East Coast to play the Miami Dolphins, where again they'll come away with a win. And the following week, right before their bye week, they host the Minnesota Vikings again on Sunday Night Football, where they will get their second loss of the season. So heading into the bye week, I have the Seahawks at a record of 3 wins and 2 losses. Coming out of the bye week, they travel to Arizona to play the Cardinals, where they will lose once again. The following week, they host the San Francisco 49ers, where they will win. The following 2 weeks, they travel, they hit the road. The first one, they again go to the East Coast to play the Buffalo Bills, where they will ultimately lose. And the next week, they come back to the West Coast, and they travel to Los Angeles to play the Rams, where they will beat the Rams. Okay. So at this point, I have the Seahawks with a record of 5 wins and 4 losses. Probably not where you want to be if you're a Seahawks fan or if you're a Seahawks player. But there's still plenty of time to make this up. After they travel to Los Angeles, they host the Arizona Cardinals on Thursday Night Football, where they will win against the Cardinals. The following week, they make their third trip to the East Coast to play the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football, where they will lose to the Eagles. The following 2 weeks, they host both our New York teams, the New York Giants and the New York Jets, in that order, where they will beat both of them. The following week, they make their last trip out east to play the Washington Redskins, where they will come away with a victory. They come home to play the Los Angeles Rams, where they will win. And in week 17, they travel to San Francisco, where they will ultimately lose to the 49ers and finish with a record of 10 wins and 6 losses. Usually 10 wins and 6 losses is enough for a playoff spot, but we'll see how things shape up. This brings us to our third team in the NFC West, the Los Angeles Rams. Now, the LA Rams have been undergoing a tremendous shift and change. If you remember, only 2 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl against the Patriots and were ultimately right up in that game up until the very end. They had a shot to win it, but ultimately, I believe that game exposed a lot of weaknesses that the Rams had and did have at that time. So they're continuing this overhaul of their roster and getting rid of some of their veterans and bringing in some young talent. So amongst these people amongst their players that they are getting rid of is, number one, they cut Todd Gurley, All-Pro, Pro Bowl running back who led the league in scrimmage yards in their Super Bowl season. They cut him. Brandon Cooks, their Pro Bowl wide receiver, they traded away Brandon Cooks to the Houston Texans. Outside linebacker Clay Matthews, who they cut and actually had a big, a lot of drama with. They basically cut both Clay Matthews and Todd Gurley. And from the reports, they failed to pay them properly. They're withholding paychecks from them, which is a big, I hope everything's okay after paying for $1 billion stadium in Inglewood. And the last key player that they lost was, again, a very valuable pass rusher to what they had going on, and Dante Fowler Jr. Okay, Fowler is now with the Falcons. So with all of those losses, they were able to bring in 2 rookies through the NFL draft. They didn't have any first-round picks after their trade for Jalen Ramsey last season, so they had to wait until the second round to make their first selection, and they made 2 selections in the second round. The first one was running back Cam Akers, and the second one was wide receiver Van Jefferson. Now, obviously, I think Akers is going to play a huge role in what the Rams do after releasing Todd Gurley. So I expect him to be at least a 2-down back, first down, second down back. I don't know if he's going to be their third down back, but I think he is going to have a huge role in what the Rams do this season, taking some of the pressure off of Jared Goff. As we know, Jared Goff, he likes to play action passes, so they need to get that run game going. So I see him having a huge role. And Van Jefferson will try to take place of Brandon Cooks. So they still have Robert Woods and they still have Cooper Kupp in the slot. So Van Jefferson should be the third receiver out there with those other two guys. Scheduling. Los Angeles Rams open up the season with 3 straight losses. The first one Sunday night against the Cowboys, where they host the Cowboys. And the following 2 weeks, they go to the East Coast to play the Eagles and play the Bills. Well, they will lose both of those games as well. So I see the Rams opening up their season with 3 straight losses before they get their first victory at home against the Giants. The following 2 weeks, they again hit the road. The first one at Washington, again, another East Coast trip where they will beat the Washington Redskins. And the next one, traveling to San Francisco to play the 49ers, where they will lose. Okay, so 6 games into the season, I have the Rams at a record of 2 wins and 4 losses. Not exactly where you want to be if you are a Rams fan. The following week, they play host to the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football, where they will ultimately beat the Chicago Bears. And in the following week, right before their bye week, they travel to Miami to play the Dolphins, where they will lose the game. Okay, so at their bye week, I have the Rams with a record of 3 wins and 5 losses. Again, not exactly where you want to be if you're the Rams, but if you can have a strong second half of the season, you might be able to slip in as a wild card and make the playoffs. So at 3-5, the following week after their bye week, they host the Seattle Seahawks, where they will lose. The following week, they travel to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. Say hello to Tom Brady, where they will ultimately lose on Monday Night Football. And the following week, they host the San Francisco 49ers, where they will lose again. And the following week, they travel to Arizona to play the Cardinals, where there will be a loss as well. So right after their bye week, they have 4 straight losses, bringing their record to 3 wins and 9 losses. The next 2 weeks, they host the New England Patriots and they host the New York Jets. The first game against the Patriots is on Thursday Night Football. Both of those games, they will come away with victories. The next game, they travel to Seattle, where they will lose. And their last game, Week 17, they host the Arizona Cardinals, where they will win the game. Okay. So all in all, I have the Rams pegged at a record of 6-10. If you're a Los Angeles Rams fan, that is not where you want to be, especially considering only 2 years ago, you were in the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. This team is going to have to undergo a rebuild and recovery. I only hope that Sean McVay can still keep his job after the season. I know that if he does, then for sure going into the next season, he'll definitely be on the hot seat. Okay. After 2 years of trending upwards for McVay and the Los Angeles Rams, these past 2 years after their Super Bowl have been going downwards and trending the wrong direction. I think he'll be given 1 more year to turn the ship around for the Los Angeles Rams. So now this brings me to the last team in the NFC West, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals had a terrific offseason, I believe. They made probably the trade of the offseason where they swapped aging running back David Johnson for Pro Bowl, All-Pro wide receiver, probably the top 3 wide receiver in the entire league, DeAndre Hopkins. And they did this at a fairly cheap price. I believe they gave up a 2nd-round pick to bring Hopkins over. And like I said, and they offloaded their salary, that obligations for David Johnson. Terrific trade for the Cardinals. In addition to that, their top 10 pick in the draft was Isaiah Simmons, the do-everything linebacker safety hybrid, who Coach Kingsbury has said that they will settle into a role at linebacker for them. In addition to that, they brought in 2 free agent linebackers as well, middle linebacker Devon Kennard and outside linebacker Devondre Campbell. Okay, I really think the Arizona Cardinals have a shot to take that next step and really hit the playoffs. I think they did a lot of terrific things. I think they're an up-and-coming team. I really like what Kyler Murray did last year. And I think only bringing in DeAndre Hopkins is going to make things better for him. I'm really looking forward to seeing Kyler Murray thrive in the second year of Kingsbury's offense. So now to their schedule. Week 1, they travel to San Francisco to play their former division champion, San Francisco 49ers. I believe they will lose that game. The next 2 games they host in Arizona. They host the Washington Redskins and they host the Detroit Lions. They will split those. They will beat the Redskins and they will lose to the Lions. Sorry. Getting ahead of myself. The following 3 weeks, they are all on the road at Carolina, at New York Jets, and at the Dallas Cowboys. They will beat the Carolina Panthers and lose to the Jets and lose to the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. The following week, right before their bye week, host the Seattle Seahawks, where they will beat the Seahawks. I think them beating the Seahawks there will be their statement win thus far into the season. They've so far, I believe that they will lose to the teams that they should lose to. They'll beat the teams that they should beat. But that will be their one signature win that will hopefully get them feeling good going into the bye week. That'll be their signature win that they're then looking for in the first half of the season. So going into the bye week, I have them at 3 wins and 4 losses. The following week, they host the Miami Dolphins, where they will come away with a victory. The week after that, they host the Buffalo Bills, where they will fall victim to the Bills with a loss. The following week, they travel to Seattle to play the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football, where they will lose. And the following week, they travel to New England. Again, another East Coast trip for these West Coast teams. They'll travel to New England to face the Patriots, where they will lose as well. So thus far, I have them at a record of 4 wins and 7 losses. Again, probably not where they wanted to be. I really think that a lot of these losses will be really close losses. I don't think they're going to get blown out in any of these games. And like I said, I think the Cardinals are doing the right thing. The following week after the Patriots, they host the Los Angeles Rams, where they will win. The following week, they travel to New York to face the Giants, where they will win. The following week, they host the Philadelphia Eagles, where they will lose. The following week, they host the San Francisco 49ers, where they will get once more another very defining, another feel-good victory against the 49ers. However, in week 17, the following week, they travel to Los Angeles to play the Rams, where they will fall victim. Ultimately, I have the Cardinals pegged at a record of 7 wins and 9 losses. That's not bad. That's an upward trend. I think that some of those games could go the other way. I think they're going to be right in there, up close, right until the very end in all of their games. I don't see them getting blown out at all. And ultimately, I think it's going to be a very exciting team to watch. So this wraps up my preview of the NFC West. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to leave me any comments. You guys can always reach out to me. This ends episode 1 of Randall Handles Football Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys next time.
Who you play, whether it's a high school team, a junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team, when you turn the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 3 others in field position to set up touchdowns, you ain't gonna beat anybody I just talked about. Anybody. All right? And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.